Today's episode is brought to you by Loot Crate, the subscription box for the geek, gamer, and or nerd in all of us. For less than $20 a month, you get 6 to 8 items of gamer and pop culture licensed gear, apparel, collectibles, unique one-of-a-kind items, and more. Make sure to head to lootcrate.com/kfgames and enter code KFGames to save $3 on any new subscription. Remember, you only have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive that month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It's over. So go to lootcrate.com/kfgames and enter code KFGames to save $3 on your new subscription today. What's up, guys? Welcome to the first ever episode 29 of the Kind of Funny Gamescast. As always, I'm Tim Gettys. I'm joined by the coolest dudes in video games, Colin Moriarty, Greg Miller, and Portillo the Wiener Dog.
Thank you for not leaving him out.
Yeah, I know. He's doing some things today that I really like.
He doesn't have enough star power.
He doesn't.
I'm sorry.
So
he doesn't have enough star power.
We tried it the one time where we had him laying in state out here, and I couldn't handle it, right?
Yeah.
I've been seeing this new dog bed that's shaped like a hot dog bun. That might be a good fit for him, just to sit there.
I mean, I like that. I'm
Yeah.
definitely into that.
Still concerned with the notion that he must be involved
I'm just letting you know.
necessarily in the show, since he typically just
dog.
lays there, and he's not only typically
The
a dog,
big
he
thing
is,
I
in
wanted
fact, a
to
dog.
present
He's
to you
in
guys
fact
on
a
this
dog.
is if you watch this on YouTube, of course.
Yeah.
There's the intro. I do think we need to put a Portillo's face in there at
You're
some
right.
point because it
You're
goes
right.
dun dun and it's us. But where's Portillo?
He should have a little flash frame.
He has a lot of insight and interesting analyses and anecdotes about the industry, through his long-standing exposure to the industry.
Sure. You know what? Here's what I'm going to say. You ask any motherfucker who's your favorite peanut from Peanuts, they're going to say Snoopy. Snoopy had a longer career than any of these idiots.
True
Charlie
enough.
Peppermint Peppermint Batty. Nobody cared about these guys. It was all about
Wow.
the Snoop.
Yeah, the Snoop.
Why are you saying their names like that? Are you afraid of getting
'Cause no-
sued? Are these like the fucking off-brand toys you find in Walgreens?
Yeah, exactly. No.
What do you think Portillo's favorite games would be if Portillo was not a dog?
Civilization 5.
He would be into that.
He has a deep
would
mind.
Be into that.
So
Oh yeah.
I think he'd like Kinect games. He likes to play. I just don't let him do it. I forced him into this
So
soft like
Dance
life.
Central. He's all about that.
Yeah, he could get into that. Connectimals. He see
Okay.
other. He can
Oh,
see cats for a change.
Connectimals.
Skittles.
I liked Skittles. Jesus, it reminds me of David Clayman. I like that you brought up the point that when you're not around, the Portillo gets depressed.
Yeah.
Now, what is the nature of his depression when he?
I can show you images. Christine will tell you about it. We got to get
Well,
Christine
he-
on the
he-
show to describe.
He looks a little depressed all the time. He looks a little something, actually.
I don't know if depressed is the right word. He's something though.
He's definitely something.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I mean,
about
y'all. Wait, hold on. This week I'm leaving this week, and you're staying.
Mhm.
You can observe him for yourself.
it. Do I have to?
I mean, look at how sad that dog is. Look at his head down, just not happy.
That's kind of his natural condition. I just don't believe that he's. This is what I was saying about Portillo's. I'm not sure that he's self-aware enough to know that you're not here.
I assure you, he is.
I think it's not as deep as you think. I think he knows he loves you more than anything, right?
Yeah.
But I think once you're gone, it's like when he goes to pet camp, I think he just goes about his business. And then he smells you again or has this identity with you again where he remembers that he loves you more than
yeah.
anything. Like, in other words, I don't think there's a pining or a longing.
You want me to call Christine?
You don't have to call Christine because there's no way she could possibly know the answer to this.
She'll tell you how he acts differently.
It's not that important. We could talk about this another time. I just wanted to say that I don't think Portillo's a deep enough thinker. He's not exactly an existentialist. He's not out there in the woods with Thoreau and Emerson thinking about,
No one is.
questions
They're
that-
dead.
They are dead.
But no one's out in the woods talking to them.
At some point,
Don't put
someone
down
was in the
Portillo,
woods talking
Colin.
to them.
He's doing okay. He's doing them.
I mean, he's doing something.
Yeah.
I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying, I don't think that, like, when Greg leaves, he's probably sad for a minute, then he forgets what sadness
No,
is.
he's sad the whole time.
And then he just
forgets what's sad.
he sleeps for 18 to 20 hours a day and he eats and he runs around and does things. And then he doesn't. And over time, I think, if not exposed to Greg, he would forget Greg existed. And then he would remember, because scent being the closest sense tied to memory, remembers that he indeed loved Greg more than anything else, which is why he gets excited when Greg gets home.
I don't think it's getting close enough to him being gone, me being gone long enough that he's getting to forget me forever territory. I maybe after a few days it starts to wane. Sure,
But don't they say about dogs that, like, when you leave the house, the dog thinks every time that you're not going to come back?
Yeah, they have no idea how much time passes. Is what's said. Yeah.
This is the Kind of Funny Gamescast, the show where we talk to you about video games and all the cool stuff going
Sometimes.
on in video games. Only sometimes. Most of the time, we're not going to do that. But see, how could we when we have this? Every week over on youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, we break this show up topic by topic, Monday through Thursday. Full episode on Friday, but if you want that episode early, you can go to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, and you can get it early. Is this one worth $1? I can tell you it will be.
Totally
You
worth
know
$1.
why? Because this is the special Patreon episode. I just decided that. So here's the deal. Over on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, there's a bunch of different tiers.
Right.
Some of
Tobacco.
the tiers get you different stuff. For $1, you get the exclusive episode that we do monthly. You have access to that. For $5, you get this show early. $10, you get this video early. And some other number that I don't remember, but I think it's 15 or 20. You get thanked visually.
Oh!
So Kevin, can you please put it here? Thank all the good people for all their good work. Huh?
20, says Kevin.
Yeah, this one's worth the 20. I'll tell you that much.
15, yeah, that's right.
15's the
You get at 15, you get
the monthly chat.
and you get Colin Moriarty Live.
Yes,
As a
you're
YouTube
right.
video. Hate Twitch? Want to watch it on the go wherever you are? Get it on YouTube. Archive.
Now, there's an important thing. One of these tiers that are up there,
Yeah.
50 perhaps? I don't know. But if you go to patreon.com/kindoffunnygames,
Man, you did a lot of
you'll
research
see-
on this one.
Whatever. It's not about the money. It's about the what the tier is. I know the tier. The tier is you get your topic on the show.
Right.
Now, every once in a while, we sprinkle them in. But I decided today, because we had to do the thank yous and stuff, I want to sprinkle all over the place. And I want this to be the Patreon extravaganza. So it's good.
Why'd you
Every
go down on that
question.
one?
I don't know.
You were excited.
I didn't want to get too.
We
too
did the
excited.
siren?
Yeah, it was a little much. I don't know who's in this house right now. I don't know if Christine's here or not. I want to respect her space.
She
I want to
wouldn't
respect her audio levels, and I don't want to scare Portillo.
That's true. He
We
was
need
trying to lick my mouth.
Need
while
to
I
keep
did
him around. So every topic in this is going to be brought to you by someone from Patreon.
it. Okay.
And I think it's
I
going to
like
be.
that.
It's
That's
gonna be
good.
kinda cool. Yeah,
That's cool.
it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Before we get into any of these topics, now look at Portillo's face right now.
Mm-hmm.
He looks depressed. Right now, he looks depressed. He looks like
He doesn't look depressed. He looks tired. He looks like he's had a long day. Look at that. Like he's very tired. He's so sleepy.
The world's got you down, Portillo.
Things are
Watch this,
hard.
watch this. He loves this. He loves that. It's like the crack of your butt, but it's the crack of his face. He loves this.
You like that when someone does that to the crack of your
Who
butt?
doesn't? You bend over right now, do too. You'll see.
It's like swipe. Yeah, you're gonna just swipe your finger right down there.
Why? Remember when you did that to your friends' credit card stuff? What a bunch of weird perverts we were.
I don't know that I ever did that. Actually, to my friends.
Like a piece of cardboard?
Put through the butt crack.
Well, like not like when they're naked butt, but like just I'm sure it'll all be in my documentary.
All right. Okay. So before we get into all that, Leaping Tiger, we want to give a nice little shout out to them. The last couple of weeks, we've been doing this thing called game nights.
Yep.
And
Kinda Funny game nights.
on Wednesdays.
Yep.
We at what time was it?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Pacific time.
He's so good. At
I
this
think it's
stuff.
a really cool thing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we always talk about this, right? And this being the Patreon episode, they went up and they were the first people to come to Kind of Funny Games and take the sponsorship tier, right? And that they did that because they're fans of what we do, and so they want to integrate with us and the fellow best friends the best way they can. And they do that by planning game nights where they give away a Vita to somebody. And since the app's brand new, you're only playing with the Kind of Funny people, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So right now everyone's playing Rocket League, which
Right.
you're playing that anyways. So
Yeah.
might as well play with Kind of Funny people and win a Vita.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn cool. So the leaping-tiger.com is where we can go to get it,
Right.
or you can get it. There's an iOS app and
Right.
all that stuff.
Android's coming.
Pretty much, it's just a way to. It's a friend finding app to be able to play games together, see who's playing what, go on quests, and do all that stuff.
It's like a mixture of Foursquare and some kind of friend finder, yeah. Because you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm checking into Rocket League, and then it shows you who's playing Rocket League around you, and then you can message them like, hey, do you want to play together? You're like, yeah, sure. Are you Kind of Funny people? Yeah, I hate Colin. No, I love Colin. I'm gonna drive to your house and kill you. Don't do that. That's all bad. Don't do that.
So yeah, some of those things happen, some of those things don't. But definitely check out the Rocket League game nights for us and leaping-tiger.com.
Yeah. So Wednesday, go play it 7 to 9. Use Leaping Tiger. You have a chance to win a Vita.
Yay!
Yeah, we need more Vitas in the wild, Colin.
Sure do, Greg.
And I'm glad to get a Vita out there because that Persona 4 dancing all night is so goddamn close.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that over this trip when we were going to SGC playing the Vita, and I'm like, this is fun. I need a game, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh wait, it's coming.
It's coming.
Persona dancing all night.
Yeah, so I was I tweeted about this, but after all so as you guys might know, Greg Miller has a new nickname, and it's Greg Meet and Greet Miller
Sure.
because
I'll
Greg
take that.
Miller loves his meet and greets.
Yeah.
We all do, But Greg really loves
Did you see that when we got back out of the meet and greet in Frisco, Texas?
I
It
was
took
with
him
him.
less than an hour to tweet out about the next meet and greet.
He's
I like to give you guys
we were
notice.
literally just
Saturday, Buena Park Portillo's. Come eat at the restaurant with Greg, Tim, Nick, Kevin. That was so good I named my dog after it.
It was
You
so
named your
good.
dog after Kevin?
Portillo's restaurant.
Oh my God. Anyways, the point is, over the last couple of months, we've been doing a lot of meet and greets, and you guys have been doing them for a long time via IGN and all this stuff. But I swear to God that we must have autographed over half of the Vitas in existence.
Yeah.
By this point.
I like the best one at the SGC meet and greet at Wild Wings was the guy who bought it right before he came to us. He had it, he unwrapped it, and like he was like, I just bought this
That's
like 15
awesome.
minutes ago, so you guys could sign it. And I was like, yeah.
Cool. Good purchase.
All right.
You're
choice.
welcome.
So,
You are welcome.
back to the topic at hand. Topic number 1 is from our boy Kenny Char.
What up, Kenny Char?
He's a good
Long
dude,
time
man.
supporter.
He's been
Kenny
in there
Char's
from the long run.
a down ass.
He's a down
motherfucker.
ass motherfucker. In light of the recent Kojima/Konami debacle, as well as Nolan North's recent comments regarding Amy Hennig's departure, I was wondering which individuals in the gaming industry would be able to go to a new studio and be granted the resources to create a new game. I originally came up with a long list of candidates, but Igarashi and Inafune's inability to fully fund Bloodstained and Mighty No. 9 through traditional routes has me rethinking things. At this point, would it just be Kojima and, not that he would ever leave, Miyamoto? Thanks. And kinda.
Funny. That's a good question. And that's a good point. He raises a very, very interesting point with Inafune and Igarashi in the fact of what games our publishers currently funding, right? And I think that Kojima, I mean, is in a different boat, right? And the fact that his game is, Metal Gear has been going on forever, evolving. It is third-person adventure. You know what I mean? It's not stuck in a bad way, quotes like Mega Man or traditional Castlevania Symphony of the Night, right? 2D side-scroller. So with that in mind, you'd think, what? Neil Druckmann or Bruce Straley, right? If they left Naughty Dog, they could go anywhere. They could go, and they made Last of Us, Uncharted 2, now Uncharted 4. Like, they'd be able to just write their own ticket and do whatever the hell they wanted to. And that's again, because they're making games that are in the zeitgeist right now that are super popular. Right, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, those are the names that came to mind for me too. I think there's two things. One is that there are more obscure names in the industry, or for instance, not even obscure, but someone like Carmack, for instance, at id, like he could have gone and done whatever he wanted, and he did. He left id, and he's doing Oculus stuff now. But I think that we look almost at the visionaries in terms of the artistic merit or the creativity, and that's how you get guys like Neil and Bruce or Amy, all from Naughty Dog. But I think that there's probably names we don't even know, or names certainly our audience wouldn't know, and we're not going to get too into the weeds, that would easily be able to do other things based on their prowess to make engines, their prowess to code, or their prowess for multiplayer design and all these kinds of things. So I think that we look at it just based on the names that we know, but I think there are a lot of names that we don't know that can probably do some pretty big things at pretty big studios too. But I think Kojima is the one great example, and maybe Druckmann and Straley and a few others, that if given the chance, not only could do whatever they want, but will probably have a significant bidding war between multiple big publishers. Because I don't think you can compare Inafune and Igarashi unfortunately, to someone like Kojima or Miyamoto or Hennig or Bruce Straley, just because they've not had the critical success. I'm sorry, they have had the critical success. They have not had the commercial success that is necessary for these big publishers to pay attention to them. So it makes somewhat some sense that big publishers wouldn't be interested in Bloodstained, not because they can't make money on it, but because they can't make a lot of money on it. So it's not, if Activision is going to get involved with Igarashi and they can make $5 million in profit, it's probably not even worth it for them to do it. You know what I mean? So I think that we have to keep those kinds of things in mind. So I am most excited for Metal Gear to come out because I want to see what Kojima does, because I think that Kojima will reemerge probably at a Western studio or a Western it's more accurate to say he'll reemerge, I think, at a Western publisher with his own studio.
You think that's more like, that's the most likely situation?
Yes.
Don't you think he's looking at Igarashi, and he's looking at Inafune, and he's thinking, like, I got to get on this Kickstarter thing. I think take all this goodwill. Like I was saying last week, right? Like, he's going to come out of this a fucking folk hero. You know what I mean? People would throw money at him.
Sure, but I think that I don't think we all overestimate how big Kickstarter is for cachet and for getting money through that. But Yu Suzuki got only $6.5 million, which is still the most funded game, I think, of all time on Kickstarter for Shenmue 3. I think that if Kojima went to Kickstarter, he'd be able to do more than that, but he's still not going to get the money he needs to make the game he wants to make. So
To make
But I don't-
there's
but
something on Metal Gear's
I think
like
money
level and scale.
on Kickstarter is just part of it. Like of course, like that helps, and that's a nice little kickstart to the whole thing. But it's also the stories, the articles, the controversy of should he be doing this or should he not? He can make money this way. Like all of that kind of feeds into it, and then it's just going to retell the story of Kojima being this like folk hero and all that stuff. And it's like that. It kind of creates the underdog thing where the end goal of the money isn't really the story. If all it needs is 7 million to become the most funded game. All of a sudden, that's a headline. You know
but
what I
he
mean?
can't. But the point, that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make is that he can't make the games that he makes for $7 million. So it's more. And I do think that it would be. I personally believe that it would be a little weird for Kojima can absolutely make a studio for an exclusive studio for a AAA publisher. I have no doubt about that. And he would need way more than what he's going to get on Kickstarter to make the games that he makes. I don't want him to go to Kickstarter because he doesn't. That's not going to be good enough for him, and I don't mean that he's the greatest developer of all time because I don't think he is. I in many ways I think he's somewhat overrated because I'm curious like what the people behind the scenes are really doing to make these games great. He's worked with the same same core group of guys for a long time.
He's got a great team.
But it's more that he is one of the few names that I think because of the zeitgeist right now with his particular situation with Konami that there are publishers that would die to get him on board, and so I don't. He's not making something obscure. Mighty Number 9 is still a pretty obscure game, and Bloodstained is a 2.5 Metroidvania game. It's not big bucks games. Like he makes big cinematic games that you cannot make for $7 or $10 million, and so I'd be curious to see. I think going to Kickstarter is a silly route for him to.
My side thing to that is I'm interested to see if he wants this next game to be a big crazy ass budget game. You know what I mean? Like I don't know where. I'm not saying that like Metal Gear got out of control on him or something, right? But I think that he might just be ready to go and exhale and make something like that Sun game. I remember that thing on the DS, Boktai, right? And like do something different and just feel it out.
Yep.
What could I do? What does the audience expect of me? Where do we go from here? And be an artist again in quotes, since there are no more. Make another Metal Gear. You know what I mean?
Sure. Time is of the essence for him, though. I think he's got. I think that if he wants to keep. Everyone's always going to respect Kojima, and I think, and rightfully so. But I think if he wants to keep his cachet, he needs to immediately go make another AAA game. Because he doesn't have roots in the more modest. Unless you go back to really his
MSX.
days in the '80s and the early '90s, like he really doesn't have roots in more modest games. Unless he was like executively producing something. Even Zone of the Enders was still a pretty substantial game compared to a lot of games around it.
Yeah.
Especially like in terms of its engine and graphically and stuff. So I think that unlike Igarashi, who's known for making really handheld games, and Inafune, who's known for making, he was the producer and creator of some big franchises, but he's really known for a very simple style of game. They can get away with something that is more that is looser. And of course, remember that even with Bloodstained, and they raised whatever $5 million around that they still had other investment. That game's gonna be a lot bigger than a $5 million game. So there's a lot of different ways in there. I'm just interested because I really do believe that Kojima can get a 100+ person studio from a big publisher for his own to make a AAA game
and go do what he wants,
and do whatever he wants. And I think that he desires. He comes off as a guy that desires to make big. He wants to do stuff like that. That's what he does. He's all about. I don't want to say he's all about himself because that is not true. But he's all about his vision, and he's the marquee guy, and he's the guy on the box and stuff. So. He's certainly the example. Others, but we shouldn't discount that there are a lot of other people that can do that too, and we might just not be able to know their names, or they might not be household names, but they're certainly names in the industry.
What's interesting to me about the question is, I think what's a more fascinating question is who do we think couldn't do this? I think the fact that we know someone's name is already establishing that they are the face of this brand, company, whatever, which already gives them so much.
And I think that's the thing is with this question specifically, it's like you're talking about all the people that we don't know about and stuff. It's like they're almost not the answer to the question because they're not going to be given those things, even regardless of them having the talent. It's like kind of like Kim Kardashian. Everyone knows who she is and she gets all this stuff. Regardless of talent, it doesn't matter. She's known, right? So it's like really kind of thinking about there's only a handful of people that you could even. I think it falls into two camps. There's the people that you know their names. There's the Miyamotos, the Kojimas, the Cliff Blazinskis, those people that are characters themselves. And then there's the people like Inafune that people don't know his name. Like I think on a general level. But if you're like, oh, it's the creator of Mega Man, that means something. The creator of Castlevania, that means something. You need to be in a position where you're tied to a thing. So it's like, I think Bruce and them, it's like the creators of Uncharted. All of a sudden that makes sense. But then once you start going down the the tree a little bit. And it's like, I don't know, you can't really just give everyone credit for Uncharted, even though they all made Uncharted.
Well, David Ballard did most of the heavy lifting.
Exactly. So he'd be one of those people.
Exactly.
Right, but my only point is that there's a level of, like, Carmack was the example I used of a guy who has, I mean, back in the day he was very creatively driven in terms of the content, but he's known for engines. He's known for the fidelity of the game's graphics and how it runs, and those things were really, really important to id. So, and they still are really important to id. I mean, he would obsess over frame rates and stuff like that, and he doesn't necessarily have the chops as we saw. I don't know his level of engagement with games like Rage that I don't think were like super well received, but no one could question that the game didn't run perfectly, you know? And that was a product of his obsession over the tech. And we don't hear a lot about those kinds of guys. And in a way, the guys that make your engines are even more valuable than the creators because you can get 5 games out of that engine, you know? And so that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I'm sure that there are names, well-known names within the trenches of the industry that people would fawn over and probably make shit tons of money to not leave, that really are the refiners of these various engines and the technical fidelity, the multiplayer coding and all these kinds of things. I think, you know, that's relevant. I mean, so not for every Ken Levine, you have to have a guy that, you know, Ken Levine's not the programmer. Ken Levine's not the you know, he's the creator, he's the writer, he's the visionary. And those are important at a base level, but of course, but we shouldn't undercut the fact that we're still playing a game. You know what I mean? Portillo, stop.
Kevin will be back. He'll be okay. Don't worry.
So that's basically where I stand on that. But I think it's an interesting question. It's more about if teams were mobile in my mind, like who, you know, like for instance, like how much would Microsoft kill to get Naughty Dog, you know, or how much would you know, Sony want to get, you know, one of the, you know, like one of Nintendo's internal studios or something like that. Like it's, I look at it as more as it's like a team, you know, a team effort. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that do a lot of really important work too. And if you just took the visionary, they might not necessarily all go along with that person, which is why I'm interested to see what Kojima does in terms of like how many people he's going to poach inevitably
He's going to take everybody
from those studios and how much value that's going to be when he's certainly on the market soon. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens. I'm so much more excited about that than the actual game. Like Metal Gear Solid 5 is fine. I'm not really excited about it at all, but I'm that's just me personally, but I am excited to see what happens to this particular person.
I'm excited for both. I really want to play that game.
Can't wait for that game.
It looks great. It's just not a game. I'm going to play Mad Max before I play Metal Gear. I know that's crazy. But.
Oh my god.
You're a silly man, Colin. All right. So, topic 2 comes from Min Chung. Hi, this is very exciting. My question is, what are your thoughts on naming babies based on video game characters? I named my daughter Ellie when she was born 10 months ago. It was heavily influenced by The Last of Us. I've seen people name their kids weird and frankly stupid names based on books or movies, but Ellie is a real name. The name was cute, but it was the relationship
judging.
Ellie and Joel had that really inspired me. I wanted to be a Joel figure to my daughter. I wanted to be a father who would do anything to protect his daughter, though Ellie isn't Joel's daughter. Spoilers.
That's pretty known.
Anyways, I wanted to hear your thoughts on this matter. And lastly, the Korean barbecue in Atlanta is still available whenever you guys come back here. Thank you, man. Thank you.
I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that we're to a point where video games can be taken seriously enough and like you can do that and not, I mean, don't get me wrong, people are still going to scoff. There's going to be people you meet where you explain the name and they're going to be like, game? But I mean, the majority, and don't get me wrong, those people will die soon. They're aging out of the demographic and then it'll just be to a point where, yeah, you can respect somebody. When we met Logan at Comic-Con during our panel, and I was like, oh, who? And his mom was there, like, you name him after Wolverine? She's like, yeah. I was like, that's fucking awesome that you named your son after Wolverine. Are you kidding me? Like, I love the fact that kind of stuff's happening.
Yeah, that's really cool. A couple days ago, Kevin Smith, on some social media.
I saw this on Instagram.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a true story. I don't know if he actually named his daughter after Harley Quinn. Really?
He did?
Right,
Yeah.
So he was like, yeah, in 2003 or whatever, everyone I met was like, oh, so you must really like motorcycles. And
For
now
Harley.
it's like, oh, you must really like...
Have you seen the Suicide Squad trailer?
Yeah, it's like, that's crazy that Harley is now.
And I remember that. I remember when he did that because I was a huge Kevin Smith fan. And obviously, I am a huge Kevin Smith fan, and I am a huge DC fan even back then. And I remember that. And I remember being like, that's awesome, but really weird that this animated series character is caught on to this level that he's comfortable doing that. You know what I mean? But now, like, being an adult, right, I wouldn't bat an eyelash at that, right?
Yeah. What's interesting for me is, like, names are names. You know, whether it's a game character or a movie character, comic book, whatever, it's like, or a real person you know. It's like when you hear it, if it resonates with you, if that there's a couple ways to look at it because you're not necessarily naming someone after the character. You could just like the name, you know? But then there is the other side that you are naming it after this character because this character means something to you.
He wants to be a Joel to this Ellie. You
Exactly.
know what I mean? Yeah.
Whether it's that or if it's something where you meet someone in real life and you're like, oh, I'm naming this person after Kevin, who is the best person I've ever met in my life. You know, it's like that means something, but it could just be like, oh, I like the name Kevin.
Yeah.
You know? And I've thought a lot about it in my time of if I have kids, what would I name them and why and all of
Pokey
that.
and Mon.
Pokey and Mon?
Yeah, you'd have
All
them
right,
too.
that'd
Pokey
be
Gettys, Mon Gettys.
That'd be good.
Gettys.
I was thinking of naming my kid Spa.
Spa?
Spaghettis.
That's actually really good.
Yeah.
That's actually awesome.
Yeah, it is. But you know, there's been a lot of video game characters that I've kind of made a mental list where I'm like, if I have a kid, these are potential names, and a couple of them have been names I've heard in video games, and I'm like, oh, I like that. A lot of them Final Fantasy characters.
Lay me out. Yeah,
a lot of them names that I'm not going to name my kid because they're fucking weird.
Tifa.
But no, not so much Tifa.
Blitzball.
But like Blitzball was a close second. Like Yuna, I think, is a very pretty name, and I think Yuna is a pretty girl name. I'm not naming I wouldn't be naming her after the character Yuna though. You know, it's just I like that name and it's unique and weird. But I'm unique and weird if you think
are.
about it.
You're a
you
unique and weird butterfly.
But yeah, I'm blanking now, but there's definitely other ones, and I feel like a lot of them tend to be Square games. Like I like Kairi a lot from Kingdom Hearts. Again, not naming it after Kairi, but it's
Goofy.
a pretty name. Goofy. That's
Goofy
good.
Gettys.
Goofy Gettys.
What are you getting after, GG?
I like
Goofy
that. I like
Goofy
that.
told you.
Yeah.
Ooh. Kingdom Hearts coming out this year.
Told you,
Motherfuckers. Y'all motherfuckers doubted me.
What about you, Colin?
I'm of two minds because I think that you have to give, when you're naming someone after a fictional character, I think you have to give it a little bit of space. I think that, so Ellie, I think, is kind of safe, but you just don't, like, when characters are active, I'm always interested in, like, we haven't seen the last of Ellie, and I'm interested in, like, what, you know, what if something terrible, what if she turns into like a terrible person? Like what if she ends up being the villain or something like that? Like I think I heard someone name their kid like Khaleesi or something like that. And I'm like, that's like really not a good idea because like you have no idea what the fuck that character, like that character could be by the end of that series be a fucking villain and be awful or be dead in some, like you named your kid after a fucking character that's going to get decapitated. I don't know what the fuck happens to her, but you know, like there's just all these, wait until it's over, you know, and then go in that direction. So I don't think it's necessarily capricious, but it's like a little bit when people are rushing to name their kids after things that are like very new. I think that's just it's your prerogative, but I think it's just dangerous because you don't know what the ramification of that name is going to be when it's all said and done. Yeah. And that's going to fucking matter. You know, especially Ellie you can get away with because it's an Ellie short for Ellen first of all, and it's you know, or Eleanor. Yeah. And you can, not that we know like what necessarily her name is in the game, but Ellie is not just a normal name. I mean, like that's a shortening of something.
Maybe he did Ellie.
Well, Khaleesi, you know,
Khaleesi's
Khaleesiandria.
And Khaleesi's the title, isn't it? It's not the name.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just you just don't know what's going to happen. And you don't like with Ellie, you can get away with it and be like it's just a family name, or no one's going to ask like how she got her name Ellie. No one's going to ask that. But when you have a kid named Khaleesi, it's like, well, we know where you got that from, and God forbid she ends up being like the fucking end of the world, you know, villain or something like that. Now you just named your kid after a fucking cat. You can't do anything about it, and everyone knows why you named your kid Khaleesi. So like, I just think you have to give yourself a little bit of space from some of these fictional characters. That said, I have no problem with it. I personally wouldn't do it. Yeah. But I'm not. I love video games, but I'm not going to name my kid after video games. But that said, I want to name my kid after historical figures. So it's like, it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. Although those were real people that did real things. So I think there's a big difference there. But you know, like I want my, I've always wanted to name either for a boy or a girl my first kid Roosevelt, and for Teddy and for FDR, and because we're from New York and all those kinds of things, just like they are. And I love that name. But that's a real, like, they're done. We know everything they did, good and bad, and they're not perfect people, but I have a good vision of what FDR and Teddy Roosevelt did, and it's way more positive than negative. And so I'm inspired enough by their real life events, both of them, to name my kid Roosevelt as a first name, and I think that's awesome. But if it was like the 40s and I didn't really know, or the 30s and I didn't really know what the fuck FDR was going to do yet, it might be a little dangerous kind of thing, you know? So that's the only point I'm trying to make.
I think it's one of those things, though, that you can do it. You could name your kid Ellie, or if we're in the 40s, you could name it Roosevelt, and not. For me, it was just like we used to always talk about how we wanted, when we were both, I remember when we first started at IGN, we were like, we're so into this, and when we're both EICs of channels, we want to get IGN tattoos, right? And I kicked around that for a long time, and people used to always say, that's a dumb thing, don't do that. What are you talking about? Don't do that. If I had done it, and I had gotten my IGN tattoo, I wouldn't regret it now that I don't work at IGN. That would still be something that was cherished and very important to me at that time. Just like if...
You might.
I'm telling you, I wouldn't. Well, I mean, I don't have it, so I guess I can't say it. But I'm telling, in my mindset, I would not regret it. I think about it all the time. I wouldn't. Honestly, I would probably then be getting more because if I liked how it looked or whatever. Now I'm talking about what I regret the motivations of it. Not do I think my arm would look good in that tattoo. It's the same way there. I think in the fact that you named your daughter Khaleesi and because you like the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones or whatever, and then in season. What are we on? What did we just end? 5, 6? We're going into 6. Season 6, she starts drinking blood and killing babies and punting them across the sky and stuff, and it's all in a forest preserve.
God damn.
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't think that, like, ruins the kid's name, because it was, like, from this one spot, and then she's growing into her own name. It's not like the name no longer is still only... The name... As soon as it's given to the child upon birth, it becomes theirs and they do what they want with it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean,
Whereas, like, it no longer is just this, you got it from this one point of origin and then went off.
I suppose. I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that because it's like, you know, the 12 apostles or whatever, right? And you're looking through the names, but it's like before Jesus was crucified. And you're like, oh, I'm going to name my kid Judas.
Sure.
And then Judas is the one that betrays Jesus, you know? And like that name is loaded forever. Forever. You know, that name means something.
Hitlers are out there. Like, you think that there's like a bunch of kids named Hitler?
I'm sure that there's some white supremacist kids that are named Hitler.
That is like just unfortunate, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the Hitler family, like, he had a sister or cousins. I don't know, something like where I think they changed their names and stuff like that. Obviously.
Sure.
But like I think that's a dead name for a good reason. I think that in you're just setting your kid out there, and that's your intent, and that might be their intent. But if your kid's named Judas, and it's, you know, the kid's out there in the real world, well, that name has a connotation that is extremely negative.
Sure.
You know, and there's nothing you can do about that. So like that's the only point that I'm
sure.
You know, to be a Judas is to be a traitor, right? And
exactly, that's why you wouldn't do it, because the name's already so tainted.
Right, but I'm saying if in the time, if they didn't wait long enough to watch Jesus get betrayed.
To wait to see the one man who betrayed the Son of God, yes. I mean, I don't know if Khaleesi's story in Game of Thrones is the exact same. But I mean, I'm also the guy who always does that thing where it's like, I don't like. I always, if I'm mean to somebody or say something, we always joke around. We're mean to each other. And it's like, I'll be like, I hope your plane crashes, which I would never say. But if I did, right, and then if his plane crashes, you're gonna feel really bad, and it did crash, I'd be like, well, that was weird. I wouldn't feel bad about it. In the same way, like, yeah, not at all. I didn't fucking will your plane to crash. Get over yourself. I didn't got psychic powers. Even though maybe I would go, I hope that Stay Puft Marshmallow Man falls over. And I just say it over and over again to see if I do have powers that can make Stay Puft Marshmallow Man fall down.
God damn it, Greg.
I mean, it's what I see. I can say the camera. I can say Kevin. It doesn't matter. But it's the same way with the name, where it's like, I like the name Barbara, right? And I'd be naming whatever after Batgirl, and I'd call her Babs and all these different things, right? But I wouldn't, like, you know, spoilers for what happened a long time ago in the Killing Joke, right? She gets paralyzed or whatever. It's not like, I don't think I'm setting my kid up to get paralyzed or to be cursed or something.
Yeah.
Now, granted, after New 52, she miraculously started walking again.
But that's not the point. That's not what I'm saying. Like, that's not her fault that happened. It doesn't make her a bad person or taint her character.
Yeah.
In other words, what I'm saying is that if you're going to do this, it's fine. I think you should do whatever you want as your kid, but give it enough. I just encourage people to give it enough space to make sure things are wrapped up and you have a full feeling of what the name means in general popular culture, whether it's with games or with comics or with movies and stuff like that, because you just don't know. Like, I would hate to find someone in a position where that person ends up, like, that name ends up being a stain on that child who didn't ask to be named that because there's an association that wasn't anticipated because they didn't wait long enough, and that kind of shit definitely is going to happen to people that are naming.
I don't think there's that many names though that like have
Khaleesi
that level.
would never be Judas, is what I'm saying.
That was just an example. I don't know what's so funny about it, really. Like, I don't see like how that like I'm just being honest. Like, Khaleesi is just an example of, like, you just don't know what that character, like, what's going to happen with that character. What's like, just be patient and wait. You know, if you're naming, your kid after like a fictional character that you have no control over the fate of until all is said and done. There's no reason to just not wait. And that was the point I was trying to make, was like, I want to name my kids after like historical figures, and if I have kids, and we have enough time and distance to just be able to judge them.
Yeah, but you can't really like hold off on naming your kid, you know?
No, but you can hold off on using a name that you don't. That could be loaded later on. I'm just saying it's not going to hurt you. It's going to hurt them. I think that's a totally reasonable and not funny thing to say.
I remember
I don't, you know, like that's just.
It's interesting. I was reading an article a while back, and I think I talked about this on Game of Greggy show at some point, but it was like looking at each year and what the most popular names are, and that there's always a high percentage of them that are names that are unique to that year based on pop culture and what was going on at that time. And it's so weird to look at and just be like,
Milli
oh, man.
Vanilli.
I'm sure there was a lot of that going on, and then
someone out there is named Milli.
When High School Musical came out, like in the top 10 names of the year, like 5 of them were character names from High School Musical.
Oh, really?
And like, or the actors' names. Like one of them was
Zach
Corbin Blue.
Oh, okay.
And the Corbins, there was more Corbins than ever before. And like, now Khaleesi and a lot of Game of Thrones characters are just being thrown out there. And there was certain video game ones too. Like I remember
Hodor.
At some point,
someone name your kid Hodor. There's got to be a Hodor.
How many? What I really want to know now is how many Judases do you think there are born every year? Some motherfuckers like, I don't care. I like that name.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are Judases out there. I just think that is like that's just an example of an exceptionally fucking loaded name.
Yeah, obviously.
You know, probably the most extreme version of that you could possibly think of. Really, you know, well, I'm sure there's other ones, but I don't know. To me, it's just like names are important and they mean something. And people always talk about how like you might have a nerdy idea for a name or whatever. It has necessarily nothing to do with games or comics or pop culture, but that ultimately that child is the one that has to go through life with that name. And so you just have to be very careful with, you know, I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say at all, frankly. You know, to just make sure that that's a name they can be proud of, or at least a name that doesn't conjure up other images in people's minds of things that are not necessarily good, you know?
All right. I looked up the most popular names of 2015 so far.
Yeah.
And I don't know the sources of many
Michael.
of these. Some of the, I mean, people are getting real creative, I'll tell you what. There's, for girls' names, Ainsley, Ainsley.
That's a character from West Wing.
That's probably why it's happening. The proliferation of Netflix.
Brioni?
Enough time has passed.
Bryony.
Baroni?
Brioni. Bryony. Eleonora. Ira. EIRA.
This isn't a real thing.
No, these are.
This is like most popular new names?
Yeah. No. The 100 hottest baby names of 2015. Yeah. It's the most kids being named this shit.
Chair leg.
I mean, I'm reading. There's Primrose, Primrose.
That's from the Hunger Games.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, so there you go.
Prim?
Pandora.
Yeah, that's a great name to name your kid.
Spotify's up next.
Like, are you like that's an example? That's an example of like people maybe most people will go through their lives. That's like a really negative name to have. Pandora. Why are people like not thinking about these?
They're taking it back, Colin. It's a pretty name.
Man, there's Pax. A dude named Pax.
PAX?
Yeah.
God damn it, Penny Arcade. All these babies getting conceived.
Rhett's popping up. I'm gonna give credit to Rhett and Link for that one.
All right.
Anyways, yeah, it's interesting to think about.
I'm glad that people are getting more creative with names though, because names are just very stagnant right now. You know, like I want to. That's why, like, I just want to go back and just find. When I was younger, I always knew I wanted to name my kids after historical figures, and I used to. When I was younger, I was like, Madison would be a great name, and stuff like that. That name is so overused now. So like, you have to get like more and like, and it just happens over and over again with names that are once creative that then people latch onto and use over and over again. Jackson's another great example. Those are great names, but now everyone's named Jackson Madison. So like, I've been in like so many situations where like with little kids running around a store or whatever, where like parents are yelling at them Jackson or Madison. I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's a lot of these kids out here. So you have to like go deeper into the well based on like what you're inspired by. And so I've wanted to. I love the idea of even taking names that are not necessarily that don't even really sound like first names and working the first names. Roosevelt's a great example of that. So like, and just calling it, if it's a girl, calling her Rose or whatever. But just finding a name that you can identify with is great, and whether that's in history, whether that's in comics or movies or whatever. I just say like, wait until if it's a real person, wait until they're dead, so there's nothing fucking bad that can happen. And if it's a video game character, wait until you know, or a comic book character, just wait. You know, because ultimately, you could be setting your kid up for getting teased and just having to carry through this name. Khaleesi's probably gonna end up being a fucking terrible person at the end of the books. Mm-hmm. If she's not already dead, I don't know. I don't really care at this point.
All right. So, topic number 3 comes from Reed Boomin. Yes, well, hold on. See, here's the problem with these things. They always have their question, but it's surrounded by a bunch of like notes to us and all this stuff.
Sure.
So I don't even know the context of this because you just copy and paste it in. I should probably erase that before I read these.
Be helpful.
I'm gonna do that. But anyway, my topic is with the 4 main gaming companies / services: Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, aka Steam.
Steam.
Do you guys see a future where any of them merge together or buy each other? And do you think they should? For example, Nintendo publishing games for PlayStation or Steam store on Xbox. Colin?
Yes, right?
I don't merging. No, making games for each other. Sure. I think Nintendo's obviously the most likely culprit to make games for someone else out of that group of 4 individuals. Steam, I think, is so ingenious and makes so much money that there's no reason for them to do anything. I think that if they just like kind of held pat, that they'd be fine. Although I still wonder what the future of PC gaming is ultimately when compared to console gaming as well. I don't know that either of them are necessarily safe. And what I mean by that is that there might be some sort of ubiquitous gaming apparatus in the future, a unified console that is neither necessarily a console nor a PC. That is just something you plug into a TV or plug into a monitor or whatever. So I don't think any of them are necessarily safe from one another. I think people talk about PC gaming as having longer legs, and I think that's probably true. But I think that ultimately, all these guys, if they want to survive in this space, will be making games for one system in the future. I just don't know when. I think people thought that might have even been now, 10 years ago, for instance. Yet we are still in this space, so who the fuck really knows? But Microsoft, I think it's likely that Microsoft sells Xbox at some point. That's been rumored for a long time, and I think that that's entirely possible. Sony makes so much money off of PlayStation compared to what Microsoft makes on Xbox that they kind of need them, although I think it's possible that they spin off eventually as well. And then Nintendo, I think, we'll see what happens with NX, but I think that I don't think it's out of this world at all to consider the fact that they'll probably be making games for those 2 guys if NX fails.
Yeah. I think how it will go down, right? That Nintendo will eventually end up putting games everywhere, becoming Sega 2.0, but being successful at it. Going out and doing that, and then, they're not going to get bought. They're going to still have money in the coffers because they're making money because their developers are making awesome games that work and are super fun to play, and now you can play them on anything. I think the most likely scenario he has in there would be, Xbox doing something with Steam. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I've never even really thought about that.
Yeah,
I don't know how it would work, though, because just the fact of you need the controller compared to the mouse.
But that's the whole thing with Steam, the Steam boxes and their controller and all that goofy stuff, right? I mean, there is a big picture mode. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibilities to think about there being, how do you compete with Gaikai or whatever, PlayStation now. Not that you really need to anymore because it's nothing. But, in the future, right, when it is better and there's even less latency that, you're using your Xbox 2 to get it, and you have your Steam app, big picture mode app that is connecting to the games you've bought on Steam to play them through here to do this, stream it off or download a little bit and play through it and keep downloading in the background and stuff like that. That could work. It wouldn't be every game, obviously, but there'd be games where it could work and do that. And that would be the thing you would need to, you figure, is you see it right now with Windows 10, right? Is the walls continue to fall down, so Microsoft is just one company, right? And it is one platform and all that stuff. When those barriers are gone, then it hopefully communicates even better with Steam. It does give you that PC-like experience if that's what you want. And so that's the thing. The problem there would be if they get spun out. If Xbox does, which you hear the rumor about all the time, that people are looking at that. That's a way Microsoft would want to do Xbox.
Well, thinking of stuff that's not likely, but just like hypothesizing on what could happen. If Nintendo were to actually merge with one of the companies, do you think that there'd be a major difference between Nintendo merging with PlayStation or merging with Xbox?
What I mean, in terms of what the companies would look like in terms, I mean, whoever it merged with that'd be fucking insane. And that would be really, really, really hard to overcome, I feel like, right? Especially if it was we've merged with Xbox, and now on Xbox Live, everything from Virtual Console is up, right? That would be insane. And there's Chivos on it and everything like that. In terms of what it looks like, I assume, right? I mean, I feel like Xbox is such a Western company. That would be the thing, right? Is they're already so Western versus how so Japanese Nintendo is. Whereas with Sony, I feel like as siloed as Sony is on territory to territory, developer to developer, that they'd pretty much be left alone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's whereas I think Nintendo would try, or Xbox and Nintendo would try to make it much more Mario's everywhere on your dashboard or whatever. Like the Chief and him are doing stuff all this left and right.
Yeah.
Whereas like I feel like if they were to merge with Sony, and obviously I keep talking as if I'm giving Sony's buying Nintendo is how I'm thinking it in my head, right?
Yeah,
but it would be that,
that
they would just be another first party developer, right? And they'd and obviously that's not exactly what it would be, but that's how I feel like they'd be run. You know what I mean? Like from the Nintendo group, here's what we have. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, I mean that would never happen for. I mean, it's all hypothetical. Nintendo is way more valuable than Xbox or PlayStation. So if anyone was gonna merge with anyone else, I think it would be like Xbox and PlayStation merging to survive. In a future, but just because Nintendo's IP alone is worth so much more than what PlayStation and Xbox's prolific outputs are, because of the bad blood between Sony and Nintendo going back a long time, as we've said before, there was no way that they. I find it if Nintendo was going to go third party but do something exclusive, they would actually do it with Xbox. But I think that the future is that they just make games for everybody. But. Yeah, I mean, just monetarily, it's hard to talk about that even in a hypothetical sense because Nintendo is just really valuable compared to the PlayStation as a brand is very valuable and the Xbox as a brand is very valuable. But I think Nintendo based only on their IP, and the fact that when you buy them, they wouldn't turn into a first party studio. They already have like 15 of them, so it'd be like, you're getting a whole. Roster. It's like an incredible. That's a heavy lift. I'd be super interested to see how that all went down.
How many conversations do you think there's been, Colin? Have there been ever legitimate conversations, you think, between Xbox and Nintendo in terms of getting an exclusive game?
No.
I would love to think that there have been. I would just love to think when Xbox was trying to fucking overthrow the world, they
knock
went
on
there.
the door and they're like, hey, just check. No, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
Just
they had
wanted
those
to
feelers
ask.
out there. I think Nintendo would laugh at it.
No, I totally agree with you. I just wonder.
Yeah.
Maybe again, as we said so many times, I wouldn't have ever guessed that they would have finally swallowed their pride and went on mobile. So I don't think we're too far off. Especially if NX is a disaster, like Wii U is, then we're not too far off from them putting their games on other consoles, and they should. That's what they should do. They don't make good hardware, and that's fine. That's totally fine. They make great games, and they should focus on that. And not even worry about the hardware anymore. I wish that we were in that future. I think that would be fantastic for gamers, but. We're not in that place yet, and I'm still interested to see what NX is. I think if they can pull a rabbit out of their hat, I think it's totally possible. The rumors, whether substantiated or not about it, don't sound too promising in terms of power anyway. Which is going to be necessary to attract third-party support. It seems like it's just like kind of like Groundhog's Day, But who knows? I'm trying to remain optimistic about NX because we literally don't know anything substantial about it at all. We don't know anything about it other than rumors. So
yeah,
I don't know.
What do you think the difference would be between Nintendo going third party for everybody and Nintendo merging with one of the two straight up?
What do you mean? I mean, the difference would be huge for whoever they did that with.
But I mean, so what do you think it would mean? Not for the companies themselves, but more just for how would the products differ between those things?
I think the digital offerings on whoever netted Nintendo would be huge. Like Greg said, I mean, they just have a huge catalog, hundreds and hundreds of games they can put on those systems, and then they're going to get all their developers. So it's so you're going to have your Fire Emblems and your Marios.
I mean, it would finally be what
stuff.
What we're talking about all the time with PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is the fact that there's no diversity between these two consoles. It's the exclusives, and that's it. You know what I mean? And that's why we're always like, well, it would have been really interesting to see Xbox commit to their vision. And we are this entertainment box, and we are Kinect, and we're going to show you why you should love it, right? Because then there would have been parity there. There would have been something different. When you finally, if in this weird world, Nintendo comes in and merges with one of them, then finally there is, I think, hands down, a definitive winner. There's a definitive leader. This is why. Which box should I buy? You should buy Sony's Nintendo box. You know what I mean? Like, you should get everything you love from Sony and everything you love from Nintendo in one. You know what I mean? And sure, you're going to miss exclusives like Halo, or vice versa. You're going to miss exclusives like Uncharted, but you're going to get every one of these Nintendo games, classic things you've missed. You're going to get the brand new Mario, the brand new Metroid eventually. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I guess the question I'm asking, to put it in a better way, is do you think that Nintendo going third party would mean that you're only getting a few core games everywhere? Whereas if they merged, then you would get all the little developers making the different games. Because if Nintendo were to just go third party, does that mean games like Fire Emblem and F-Zero and I mean, Metroid would probably be safe, but like there's certain ones that's like they would not be a thing anymore, and all of a sudden like it's like you look at Sega,
I see what you're saying.
right?
I see what you're saying. I don't know. I don't. I think even third party, you're still getting Fire Emblem. You know what I mean? There's still an audience for that. But it'd probably be a phone game if they're trying to be mobile and stick with what's already working, right? If they're trying to, I think that's what you would see, right? Is that the big exclusives you think about, your Zelda, your Mario, and I'm talking about, the console quality games that they put on Wii U now, right, would go everywhere. And the games you think of for your DS would probably go to the mobile market. Or be, maybe it's mobile and download stuff, you know what I mean? Like they're downloadable titles, but they'd still be there. I think they'd be if they're going to go that way, they'd be in the PSN drop and the Xbox Live, download thing. I don't think it would be, okay, these are only on phones and these are only there. That's not, they want to make money. They want it as many places as they can get it.
Yeah, I think it's the exact opposite, really. I think that the big games are going to do even better, and the smaller games will have a bigger platform for people to play them because they're not going to be stranded on Nintendo hardware anymore. So, like, I think that it opens up a whole new world of wonder for Metroid and F-Zero and all these things. Like, if you could not strand it on Wii U, but put it on consoles that people actually own and play and engage with on a regular basis, then obviously Mario is going to do even better. But of course, then you're going to be able to open up a reality where an F-Zero game could sell a few million copies, or a Metroid game can sell more than 1 million or 2 million copies. Like, I think that if anything, it helps the smaller games, and I think that Nintendo just grows from that point. That's why it's so exciting for them to be to be an Activision almost, not necessarily an annualization, but
that's the thing. There is like if they went third party, what would that even look like? Because I've always kind of thought in my head just that they'd be much smaller and they would just be making these games and they would have more of a schedule of, maybe the 2 games a year or whatever. But to think of them as an Activision where they are doing a whole bunch of shit at once is very interesting.
Yeah, if they went third party, cut out hardware and kept the status quo otherwise, they would still be putting out 10, 12, 15 games a year. Plus they could be a publisher of games. They can be they would be obviously publishing their own internal games like they do now, but they could be identifying and finding developers to work with, like they have been on Wii U, especially like Platinum, to deal with and publish their games too. Nintendo could be huge, and I feel like the ironic thing is that Nintendo, and I think some Nintendo fans think that Nintendo is best equipped to be a hardware manufacturer, but I actually think Nintendo can be bigger than ever if they weren't. And be like a dominant, if not the dominant force in quality AAA games. But then unlike Activision, and to a lesser extent, unlike Ubisoft and unlike EA, they would have smaller games too, because I think that that's part of their heritage, and they don't have to charge $50 or $60 for all these games. They can charge $10 or $15 or $20 if they want to release those games on something like Vita, although Vita wouldn't get the games, but something like a mobile platform in the future, or a future handheld. Yeah. I think it's unpredictable. It's an interesting question, because I think the complexion of Nintendo changes radically if they do something like that, and I think we're going to see that, and depending on the fate of NX.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, guys. Final topic, as always, is a whole smorgasbord of questions from the audience. These are not Patreon. These are from kindoffunny.com/forums. So go there, leave your topic. We'll get to it. It's going to be a fun time. Just like Dan Phillips did. He wants to know, what game magazines did we grow up reading and have a subscription to?
EGM. Electronic Gaming Monthly was it for me, man. Like, I had Game Informer too, obviously, when they made their deals with EB at the time. I picked up Game Pro. That was like the gross, the supermarkets one where I'd page through it and then ask Mom if I could get it. But EGM was the one that I subscribed to straight up and was with forever. You know what I mean? Until it ran out, until it was over. And like that's, my stories always go back. I always talk about the fact that, in 4th grade I had the Game Pro, and that's when it all dawned on me. But like the review crew of, Shu and Che and stuff like that, like that was the one, those were my like idols growing up. You know what I mean? And like to the point that, like, obviously I always tell the story of like, there's only been 2 times in my life when I couldn't stop talking. Number 2 was when I met Shu for the first time when I was working at IGN and just unloaded on him at a holiday party how like he changed my life and all that stuff. And he's like, cool, and like backed away and like left. But like even like that, and that was like year 1 of IGN. And then last year at RTX, I ran into Che for the first time at Torchy's Tacos, and we sat down. And I was playing it cool, and I was fine. And I'm like, by the way, you totally changed my life too. Yeah. And he's like, oh, don't say that. You know what
I mean? I remember when he said his name. Like that was one of those things where I was like, I've never met a Che before.
Yeah.
And then I looked at him like, oh my God, it's him.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if that sounds weird. It probably sounds weird to the younger people now who there's so many games personalities, right? But like, EGM was the one that had like, we are showing you their face, here's the information about them, and here's what they're playing right now, and here's a little anecdote.
And it made him characters. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the most important thing is like, Sushi X and
Sushi X.
and what's his name? Sean Baby.
Sean Baby,
and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It's like they were the ones that were really kind of making this a pop culture thing where it's like the act of reviewing the games and the people reviewing the games were people, characters, things, like that you could latch onto. And I think that was really the start of, at least that I remember, of latching onto people and wanting to know their opinions.
Exactly. And you'd come through and you'd see like, okay, Shu likes games X, Y, and Z, and Shane likes this, and this. And you'd go to the review and there'd be differences in their scores, and you could do the thing of like, oh, that's cool, but I agree more with Shu's favorite games right now, so that's why his opinion is weighted more to mean more for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, I know that sounds so pedestrian now, obviously, right? There's 15,000 reviewers everywhere. So, if Colin says something, but Jim says something, but I say something, that it's, whatever. It's, everyone's opinion on everything. Everybody so well, but that was so groundbreaking at the time. You know what I mean? Let alone the fact of how thick those magazines used to be.
Oh my God.
The December issue every year, that's like 248 pages and like lots of ads, but like lots of information on all these different games.
Yeah.
And then you get your E3 one, like, afterwards, and you see all these photos and all this
And that
crazy.
was it. Like, that's how you got your E3 information. And it was just like, I'll never forget seeing the issue of EGM after the E3 where they announced Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime, and Wind Waker.
Yeah.
And all three of them were on the cover. And I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And but yeah, EGM's definitely my answer. That is the one that I loved the most. But I went in on all of them, man.
Really?
Like, yeah, GamePro and PSM were my low rung ones that I didn't need to.
Yeah.
Every
The
month.
cover stories. What's the cover story?
Yep, exactly.
Page 3,
We'll see.
okay.
But official PlayStation magazine, that demo disc, that was such a big thing. That was so expensive, and I couldn't get it every month. But like it. Because the demo disc, that was an experience in itself.
That's such a great idea.
You need to have. And then once I got my Xbox, there was the, I forgot what it was called, but official Xbox magazine. That was all right. But then, of course, Nintendo Power.
Yeah, did you do Nintendo Power?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was a Sega kid, right? So
I
there
mean,
was no
I
Sega
was a
Power.
Nintendo kid. So it's Nintendo Power to me was like, I'll never the reason I know about Pokemon was Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
Had this little comic book that was like the first issue or the first episode of the Pokemon cartoon, but in comic book form.
Sure.
And it also was like a strategy guide for like the first whatever, like gym or whatever. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I need it. And I mean, that's the power of those magazines.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember them. And when I moved, I had to throw my collection out, and it was heartbreaking. But I went through issue by issue of all my Nintendo Powers, all my EGMs, all my Game Inform, everything.
Yeah.
And if I looked at it and it resonated with me, I kept it.
Yeah.
So I have a box full of like the most important issues to me.
That's why I still have it on the bookshelf. I think it is that my PlayStation 2 launch edition
Of
EGM.
that blue cover, and that was a thick issue,
because it was like they had it was like the most like EGM like on point with everything, but it was the most like off weird thing of like their whole thing of like it was like all these models like walking into a house with all the launch games. They're like playing PS2 in the pool. You're like, what the fuck are you doing? But like you said, it was just like the art. So coming to this thing and like walking through the DVDs and like how this was gonna work and what the launch lineup was. Like holy shit! And I remember that was one like I kept forever, and I took it with me on October 26, 2000 to wait in line, or October 25th to wait in line for the midnight launch, right? And me and my friend Adam just passing it back and forth, reading it, and like fantasizing about watching
What's
fucking
gonna be in
Ghostbusters
DVDs and
special features.
Yeah.
And,
Oh my god. Like that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Just think about. And for me, it was the 100th issue of EGM. I think that will go down in history as the most important thing to ever happen to me as a gamer and for who I am today.
Yeah.
Because they did the top 100 games of all time list in that. And now lists are fucking everywhere.
Sure.
Like that. It's like IGN has a top 25 list every 2 seconds about games. But to me, that was the first time I'd ever seen lists, video games ranked.
Right.
And like, here's the 100 best games of all time. And must have been 1998 or 9, maybe 99 when it happened. And I read that thing back to front or front to back to front, any which fucking way.
Yeah.
So many times that those 100 games became embedded in my memory of like, oh shit, these mean something to video games. And I was young at that point that I missed out on so much stuff. None of Final Fantasy didn't mean anything to me. I didn't know what it was. Like all the shit, then to look through and to see them review or to see how high Final Fantasy 6 was or Final Fantasy 7 and to see that where they like that was why I played Super Metroid. It was the number 2, I think, on that list. And it introduced me to all these different games. Like I had just played Mario. I just played like core Nintendo games. And to see the history of video games in that perspective, I was like, holy shit, like I need to get in on this. And then slowly I went through and played the majority of those games now.
Yeah.
You know? What about you, Colin?
From like the late 80s to like the mid 90s, Nintendo Power was my jam, and those were really special times. Although when you look back and realize that Nintendo Power was basically just a mouthpiece, I think we remember Nintendo Power a little too fondly, to be honest. And it's not to say they were dishonest. It's just to say that I feel like they focused a lot on the positive and not necessarily the negative.
But I mean, that's Nintendo, you know? And like, I
yeah,
guess
but we didn't. But it wasn't clear when you're a kid, really, that Nintendo owns this magazine. You know, like that Nintendo puts this magazine out and stuff like that. And it was fine because I didn't really give a fuck anyway. I loved that magazine, and I still have some of them, but I used to rip them apart and like put things on my wall from them once in a while. Time I just had like all these ads on my wall, basically, of like great Nintendo games, like, and just I remember random ones, like I had a Snow Brothers ad on my wall, so I'm like, why do I know this?
That's what I missed the most about these magazines. Was how good the ads were.
Yeah, the ads were
remember
different.
Yeah,
the ad I remember the most for some reason is a later ad that was in EGM and EGM2, which was the Gex one with the with the car and the hot chick.
Yeah, the spandex.
Yeah. But yeah, by the mid '90s, so I had Nintendo Power from. I mean, my brother got it. Like the Mario 2 one and the Castlevania ones were really the early ones, so it was very beginning. All the way through, I would say, I don't know, I remember getting Donkey Kong Country and, I don't know, it's probably like 95, 96, around N64. And then EGM I liked because it was agnostic, so I could learn a little bit more about the things that I didn't have, even though, and kind of learn about why I should ridicule my Sega playing friends and stuff like that. And then EGM2 I really loved a lot because, and EGM2 was actually, when I consider how I got into the industry, and I got into the industry more writing technical documents and facts and stuff like that, EGM2 was super instrumental in that. And made me love strategy and stuff like that, and strategy guides. Because EGM2 was all about
tips and
tricks and stuff
so
like that.
Then there was Extreme Gamer. Was that what the other one was? There was the strategy one.
I don't remember.
Did EGM2 become that? I don't know.
Maybe it did. EGM2 went away eventually. I remember.
Yeah,
I remember
think
getting something in the mail.
Gamer.
Yeah, I remember getting something in the mail being like EGM2 is no longer a thing, and I remember like what if it was another magazine or whatever. I don't. And then I got for 2 years in the late '90s. Next Generation, which was really, really good. It was like very high quality publishing and stuff like that. And it was more insight into more like the stuff that I ended up writing, I guess, actually, later on. So I guess that was pretty influential. And then I remember very clearly my friend Steven, who I played hockey with when I lived in New Hampshire, had a PS1 before I did, and he got the first issue of PSM, which was the Final Fantasy VII issue, if I remember correctly. And I remember being at his birthday party. I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, and I guess it was 7th grade. And I was flipping through it, and was it 7th grade? No, I guess I was going to 8th grade actually. And I remember flipping through it and being, this is awesome. It had the lid cover of the smiley face and all that kind of stuff. I took the thing out of it and subscribed, and I got PSM from issue 2 to, so that was 97 to 2004, 2005. So that was the magazine I probably got the most. And I stopped even reading it probably. Like I just got them. Yeah. Actually, like I think at some point they just kept sending it to me. Like I don't even remember renewing that after a while. Like I think I probably paid them like $30 in total. And
well, PSM was super cheap. It was like $10 for 2 years or something because like, it was just
Adelaide. And plus they had the websites, and that was Imagine Media and stuff like that, I think. So that was it. But I mean, by 97, 98, I was reading pretty much all my game news online. So it was a matter of like just having this supplemental thing you can bring on car rides and shit with you or whatever. Like, because you were talking about E3 and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't remember ever being surprised by E3 after like 1997. You know, like I didn't
have a computer, and like a lot of the people I knew, like my age group didn't have computers. You know, so it's like to us, we still didn't hear about these games until like I mentioned like Wind Waker and all that stuff. That was what, 2002.
Wind Waker was
no, that would have been right because I was already living at the Antler House.
Yeah,
came
it
out 2003. Yeah,
2001 was when GameCube came out. Mm-hmm. So, it's like I'm sure that stuff was all over the internet then, but it's like that didn't mean anything to me. It might as well not have existed.
That was the thing. Like we talk about like old media, new media, how magazines died out and stuff. I didn't even realize it was happening at the time though, because I was that guy who had EGM every month, and then Game Informer, and then I picked up stuff at the supermarkets, and then that all washed away. You know what I mean? I remember how important it was to me that I switched my EGM mailing address to Mizzou. You know what I mean? Because like those were friends coming with me, and I wanted that experience and like that taste of home. But I was all over IGN at that. I mean, IGN really came to prominence for me with like PlayStation 2 and like the run up to that, where every day in computer lab or whatever the fuck that class was, I'd click over and read it, and they had the countdown clock of how close we were to PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. But like EGM, I hung in there till it was all said and done, because like that was like a staple. But it was by the end a quaint staple, right?
Yeah.
Of like, I've read what reviews do they have early and what reviews do they have extremely late.
Yeah.
That was always the game, right? Of like, they're gonna be ahead on some and way behind on others.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the publishing, I guess. Like, yeah, I feel like I remember getting Nintendo Power again in college specifically to get that Zelda disc for GameCube, and then I just canceled it because you had to get it.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I guess I have to do it. And I'm glad I did, because I wanted that really bad.
Real bad.
But yeah, the late '90s was the rise of Merc channels and fan sites and stuff like that, and I felt like I was awash with fucking game news at that point. Like it was I was reading random sites that don't exist anymore. Some of them do. Like one of my favorite sites when I was a kid was basically just a lot of the various like niche RPG role playing and strategy sites. There's a lot of them, and so like I didn't even really read or like IGN until probably the turn of the century, where I was like, where I was reading like some of the bigger sites, because I was so invested in this subculture based on MIRC and all this kind of stuff, where people would point you in different directions to find different websites that were just run by a few people in their spare time. And I think some of these websites like kind of still exist, and there was something very personal and very cool about it.
You felt like you were in something. You were in this like club.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I felt like it was something very very enjoyable and very intimate, and kind of like what we're trying to maybe do with this. It's almost, I guess what I'm saying is it's almost like what's old is new again, because I feel like the internet's almost reverting back to that, where people would rather have a more intimate relationship with a few people and something a little smaller, and not these megalithic websites that really can't please everyone and seems to please fewer people as time goes on, because they're looking for their little communities that they can kind of latch onto. And I think I was very much like that in the late 90s. And it's so funny to talk about it, because it was a fucking long time ago. You know?
I feel like it, but it was. Man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking like 17 years ago. I mean, that's an incredible amount of time. But I was so immersed in just video games, and I remember how cool it was when my dad got me my own phone line, so I had a 56K modem on my Sony Vaio, and I remember that I didn't have to like disconnect, and I would stay online forever. And I remember I used to obsess over. I used to be on AIM, and I'd have my own name on my AIM list, and I would obsess over how long I was online. And sometimes I'd be able to stay on for like months, like without getting disconnected. And you would just have like your MIRC windows open in your ICQ window, which I don't even know if anyone uses ICQ anymore. Do you remember ICQ? It's like a messenger, like a personal messaging system that was based on like digits instead of names, and all this kind of stuff. And like just obsessing over like you leaving your away message up when you were gone at school, and then coming back and seeing if like anyone from these various sites message you and all. I don't know. It was a different and closer knit community. And then I kind of segued over to GameFAQs, and that's kind of how I found my way here.
GameFAQs, man, that was it for me. This makes me think I want to find the 100th issue of VGM. We should do a topic where we look at the top 100 games.
Oh, sure.
Because it'd be interesting to look at what the top 100 games in 1999 were. It'd be very different than a top 100 list today.
Oh, yeah. God damn.
Maximum Cortez asks, did you ever rent consoles from rental stores? I also want to give a shout out to him. He drew this awesome fan art of me as Ash.
Oh, with the
from
Pokeball.
Yeah, and it looks fucking legit. But yeah, did you ever rent consoles?
No, I didn't.
I want to say I rented a Nintendo console at some point, but I don't remember what it was. I remember really, really, really badly wanting to rent the Game Boy Advance when it came out and had Fire Pro Wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was a launch game.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if I want this console, but I want to play that game so badly. And I was going somewhere. I forget where.
Were you a Fire Pro fan? Did you even know what it was at that time?
I was a big wrestling. I'd imported before. Yeah. Because I was always on the hunt for a great wrestling game.
Yeah, it was that I remember like yesterday that Game Boy Advance launch, because I got it the day it came out, and the Arctic White.
Yep.
GBA
Pro Skater 2.
I got what did I get? I got Castlevania, Circle of the Moon, obviously, Super Mario Advance, which was Mario 2, and then the dodgeball game. It was super
Oh,
dodgeball.
Oh, dodgeball, yeah.
That was a
the
good
other one I
launch,
wanted to
man.
play.
There was a Rayman game.
Yeah, it was a great. I actually, that's what I was kind of thinking in my mind. I'm like, that might be really. I still think that. I know people think I'm crazy. That pound for pound, the Vita launch probably had the best games. I remember when we
Uncharted,
we
Luminous.
talked like there was a lot of just great games for the system. It didn't matter. But I look at Game Boy Advance and I'm like, there was actually a really solid lineup of games where I remember buying that and being like, this is pretty awesome. And GBA is underrated. I think it came and went a little too fast because the DS kind of came and they wanted to have that 3-pillar thing, and then the DS ended up just destroying everything. So I really was. I remember getting the clamshell too when Pokemon Ruby
and
came
Sapphire,
out,
yeah.
and
Clamshell was awesome. That's when I jumped on and actually
SP.
bought one.
well, it was a mind changing kind of thing for me because I remember what being so revolutionary about that was. Charging it.
Yep.
And I was like, this is so fucking cool. Like, I don't have to buy batteries anymore. I was going through batteries like fucking crazy on my Arctic White, like the flat GBA. So
No headphone jack. That was some bullshit.
yeah, it was weird. Yeah, you had to buy like a proprietary thing, right?
Yeah.
But I remember it was just so compact, and I remember going to Target and buying it, and I was like, this is kind of fucking cool, man. And I don't know that
Backlight,
was,
man. Oh,
yeah,
God.
the backlight was everything, especially because it's so juxtaposed to Circle of the Moon, especially was so dark. On that, like it was, you couldn't fucking see that game. I'll never forget that as long. I remember playing like under a lamp, being like, this is so fucking dark. Like, how are you supposed to play this game? And those problems were solved with the inclusion of a backlight, which was you could only do when you can charge the system. So it was kind of an ingenious way to go because at that point we were charging our cell phones and we were kind of getting used to that sort of thing. So. Yeah, I really am very fond of the Game Boy Advance, and I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it anymore. It was the death of the Game Boy. So
that is a great lineup too. When you go back and look at all the games that came out on it,
a lot of great role playing games.
Definitely something
and I
special.
still say that, I know some people think I'm crazy. I still think the definitive version of Final Fantasy VI is on GBA, just because it was portable and it was tight and it's how we remembered it, and it wasn't on the fucking PS1. I hated that fucking version. It wasn't as bad. Chrono Trigger was the really bad one on PS1. I'll never forget that as long as I live. How disappointing that was.
I rented a PS2 during the launch weekend from Blockbuster because I knew
how'd you get your hands on it?
I knew the people at Blockbuster,
Gotcha.
and like it was definitely like a thing where I knew that I wasn't gonna get that system.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get a PS2 until the time around when Onimusha came out, so it was like
spring 2001.
little bit later.
I think, right? Yeah, spring 2001. Because Onimusha 2 came out summer 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember
I don't
renting
remember
it, and I got Fantavision and Street Fighter.
Was it
Alpha,
EX?
or EX, whatever the hell. And I was just like, oh God.
Yeah, Fantavision I want. Fantavision I don't think is that bad, but that was what was so funny is the PS2's launch sucked.
Yeah.
And like
So
and like
bad,
and
man.
what was so
Smuggler's Run.
Smuggler's Run was good.
Oh, SSX was rented, so I couldn't get it. And
Smuggler's
that's why I
Run
wanted it.
and Madden were the standouts because like Madden looked so real. You couldn't believe how real this fucking game looked. Yeah.
Yeah, what I remember about the PS2 launch was so I got my PS2 the day it came out. My mom bought it for me, and my birthday was right before it. So the agreement, as I've said before, was that it would be my birthday present and my Christmas present. And the only way you can get a PS2 at GameStop, which was EB at the time for me, was you had to buy a console, a warranty, a controller, a memory card, and a game. It was $500. And I remember my mom being like, "This is a lot of money. So if you want this." This is all you're getting. I was like, that's fine. And I remember back then you could bring I can't believe we still could we could have done this in the 90s and early 2000s. And you guys probably remember you could just bring back your games like after a week and just opened and played and just be like, I don't want this anymore. And they would take it back. And I remember I did that for the PS2, not to be a dick, but like probably 4 times. 'Cause I'm like, these games suck. You know what I mean? I think Genji or whatever was one of the first games I got. Then I think that was what it's called. Then I ended up with Summoner, and I'm like, oh fuck, I fucking hate this game because I was looking at the lineup. I was such a role playing game nerd, and I'm like, there's nothing here for me. Like there's nothing I want to play. I ended up with Smuggler's Run, which was fine, but and NHL 2001, I guess it was, right? Yeah, or maybe 2002. So I don't know what the fuck.
No,
it was.
we went
2001.
It would have been one.
And they were fun, but I was like. The PS2 launch had the highest volume of games because there was a lot of games, and none of them were good.
Yeah,
that's like what I remember the most. I was like, "There's nothing here." Like Fantavision's a first-party game. Like I can't believe they didn't just. And From Software made a few of those launch games that sucked, which a lot of people don't know. And now they're famous for Dark Souls and stuff. But I remember that launch being so voluminous, I guess we'll call it, but not rife with quality.
Sure.
While I would have preferred a launch more like PS3's where. There were good games, plus third-party games, and then PS4's launch I think was even better.
Yeah.
So
for me, it was Silent Scope. I remember hemming and hawing. Do I
yeah.
want Silent Scope or Madden? And I was like, I'll get Silent Scope. And yeah, I played it that first day, and I went back to the store. I was like, please give me Madden.
That's so fun.
I can't believe I remember doing that with I remember doing that with Beyond the Beyond. I remember doing that with Saga Frontier, which I fucking hated. I hated that game. I was so disappointed in that game because I think when I bought Final Fantasy Tactics, they advertised that game. I would buy anything that had Square on it for like years, like anything.
The bouncer.
I liked the bouncer. That was actually one of the first. I know people don't like that. Was one of the first PS2 games I thought was actually good.
I remember trying to force myself to like the bouncer, and I just couldn't do it. I was like, damn.
It wasn't bad. It was stylish. The PS2 took a long time to burn. It really wasn't until Onimusha came out that we had. I think Onimusha might be the first really great game for that console, and then it kind of came into its own in 2002. But at that point, what was funny about the PS2 was I had by the time GameCube came out, PS2 was there, and I played a lot of it, but I was like more into the GameCube, and the GameCube just had better games. Like period. Like I just think that I just think the GameCube was like so strong, and so I would play the Grand Theft Autos and a lot of games on PS2, but I was all about that fucking GameCube, man. And PS2 could have had me probably more. I expected the PS2 to have its hooks in me a little bit more than it did, considering how poor that launch lineup was. And it was they launched it on hype, and in fact, it was a DVD player. It didn't matter. Yeah. It was very similar to the PS4, where it didn't seem like it mattered.
Yeah,
what was on it? Yeah, it was just like people were just buying it anyway. I was like, all right, cool,
we're excited.
Yeah. And then actually, the first great game was Metal Gear Solid 2.
That's what I was gonna say. Mm-hmm. But it's just because Onimusha I remember being divisive, right? Like I wasn't super into it, but Adam Brown I remember loved it. You know what I mean? But like Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty was the one where everybody was like, "This is amazing."
And that was 2001,
fall 2001.
Yeah, so
GTA.
that's and then GTA 3, which was before Metal Gear. That was September or October, right? And then Metal Gear was November.
That sounds right. I think it was October then November.
And then so I remember and then that was around time when GameCube came out. So it was then it was all about Smash and stuff like that. That fall, that Christmas season. I don't know, man. And then I remember, I don't know why I remember it must have been like August 2002, around there, July 2002, when I think Super Mario Sunshine and Onimusha 2 came out the same day. And
wasn't that in August?
It was probably somewhere in there. And I remember my dad picking them up for me and being really mad that I told him to go to the mall. I'll never forget it. But I was like, I want those games. I need those games.
I need it.
And then I promptly wrote a FAQ for Sunshine.
Yeah, I remember getting
that was
Sunshine
13 years
the
ago.
day it came out from EB.
I'm so old. We're so
happening.
old.
It's
13
happening.
years ago that Sunshine came out. Holy fuck.
That's crazy.
What a game.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Kind of Funny Games cast. Please come back every week, whether or not you think it's worth $1. I'll always think it's worth $1.
It was
And if
worth
it's not,
$1 today. We had a good time.
Yeah, I think this was a good one.
talk.
This was a good one. This is the shortest Q&A section. Well, not the shortest. This was a long Q&A session, but only 2 topics, 2 questions.
Oh.
We went off on them.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
it was
let me reiterate. Don't name your kids after characters that are still active.
I think here's the I got hung up on it too because you kept saying I don't understand what's so ridiculous about it. What's so crazy about your statement about Khaleesi?
Khaleesi.
However, because she's got 15 fucking names in this goddamn
Daenerys
book.
is her name, right?
I didn't want to get into it. I didn't want to get into all her fucking stupid names. What I'm saying, the funny thing about this is you keep comparing it to Judas, which is a story not every kid, but lots of kids learn and know. I don't think 7-8 years from now on the playground, all these kids are going to remember Game of Thrones. The parents might be like, "Oh, Khaleesi, like the Game of Thrones thing," and I don't. But I don't
like that awful woman.
Oh, the one who punted the babies in the sky.
I don't know.
George Railroad Martin really phoned it in there.
I just think you got to be cautious. I like the idea. Like I said, I think there needs to be more creativity with names. Absolutely, and I love people taking inspiration from anything, like from books or whatever games. But you got to be careful.
Real question is,
real careful.
How since the rise of us, Podcast Beyond, Kind of Funny, how many kids have been named Shuhei?
I don't know. In Japan?
No,
a lot of them.
In the States.
I don't know. I mean,
Shuhei Moriarty.
That's a very interesting question because I wonder. Yeah, Shuhei Moriarty. That'd be interesting.
A lot of Tobuscus too of it.
Tobuscus. Yeah, there probably is. PewDiePie's running around.
The bigger question I'm wondering is if one of our viewers is indeed named Judas.
Let us know. Send us photos of your IDs. Actually, just mail us your passport.
Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments below. Because is that a name that's used? Have you ever known a Judas?
No, I've never known a Judas, but I have to imagine somebody's named Judas. Some parents are like, fuck
Yeah,
it.
if your name's Hitler, let me know too, because that's weird. Yeah, I know, but like,
Shut
that
up,
doesn't
Kevin.
matter.